All right, we are back at it. Tournament number two on our 12 tournament Bravery Tour circuit. This weekend we will be in Vancouver, Washington. Battle at the border. On this podcast with me, as always, my good friend Brandon Huffman, national recruiting editor from 247 Sports. Huff, how are you doing, my friend?
Hey, I'm enjoying the outside view of the cloudless sky and the blue skies. I don't take that for granted in the month of February in the Pacific Northwest. I can tell you that. Although I was in Arizona a couple weeks ago for a 7-on-7 tournament. TB, I got a sunburn. It was like 82 in January. I mean, I can see why people like Arizona because that sun is not a decoration, it's actually a heat source.
It didn't even take 1 minute for you to do the backhanded flex of like I was in Hawaii, I was in
It got a
Texas,
little cold in Vegas last
Arizona.
week. Did I mention I was there?
I'm excited for this tournament. You know, whatever the weather ends up being, our first tournament, Space Needle Shootout in Seattle, was 7-on-7 only. Air Black won that high school division. Reggie Jones and crew have a really impressive squad, lot of talent. But for this tournament, it's our first 5-on-5 tournament of the year too. We got 17 teams in it, a lot of good programs, a lot of talent, and it's really cool to see the 5-on-5 growing and becoming a bigger part of things.
I think, it's funny because I was looking at now that the NFL season's over, the college season's over, we're seeing a lot of mock drafts. And I saw one on Monday or Tuesday that was an NFL.com mock draft. And the 32 projected first round picks in this mock draft, three of them were from the state of Washington. You had Emeka Egbuka, JT Tuimoloau, and Josh Connolly. And two of those three are linemen.
Hmm.
Josh Connolly off at the tackle, JT is an edge rusher. And it's funny because I remember driving down to Salem the day after Josh Conley announced his decision on 24/7 Sports to go to Oregon. And you and I were talking about that announcement. And one of the things, and Fui was there with
Yep.
the IBC boys. And I think that's when it really started to crystallize the importance of doing 5-on-5.
Yep.
And as that 2022 cycle is wrapping up, you went full force into bringing the 5-on-5 part of it into 2023. And it was in Vancouver 2 years ago,
Yep.
where you had the first 5-on-5 tournament. And I look back and, you had a Texas A&M offensive lineman there with Papa Afua. You had an Oregon signee in this last class with Dimitri Manning. And then you had three other Oregon signings in the class before in Terrence Ferguson and Devin Brooks and Fox Crater.
Fox Crater, that's right. Yeah.
So and three of those five were all Americans in some respect, and I think it just shows the with this projected draft potentially two first rounders from the state of Washington from the Pacific Northwest as an edge rusher and offensive tackle. It shows why 5-on-5 has become such a need. And you look back to the very first one you did, and those are just the five I'm naming off the top of my head. That's
Hmm.
five Power Four signings. And I mean, four of them are at the school that was number one for a good chunk of the season. So I think, I, I'm a former tight end, but I played a tight end in the VR offense. So I was basically an offensive lineman. 5-on-5 aspect is my favorite part of the spring. No offense to the 7-on-7 guys, but
Hmm.
I love seeing the football side of it. And it's just, the big man side of this football.
Well, and it's important because for 7-on kids, as 7-on grew and emerged, they're getting to get all these reps in the off season and play and go to tournaments, get in front of media, go on college visits. And so all these linemen were looking around like, man, all we can do is like eat together and lift together. And so as 5-on now is going, it's actually it's cool because now those guys get to travel to tournaments. They get to wear the swaggy uniforms and the drip. They get to go do the college visits. They get to get in front of media. And it's a great chance to really actually see the kid up close in person without pads on, see their size, see how they move around. So it's really cool to see both. I'm glad we have them, and they 7-on and 5-on as we do them together, but we don't do it where they're on the hash on the 50 going Five On has their own field, and we have their own tents and feather flags and score clocks and everything. So they're getting their own experience, which is really cool. And it's fun seeing it grow. I mean, 17 teams for this tournament. When we started out our 7 on tournaments, we weren't getting those numbers. So 5 on's going to keep growing more programs, and the development's going to get better and better as the kids are doing that. So definitely excited about it. We've seen good linemen come through. Got a lot of good skill players too. A lot of good youth, Huff. I'm really excited because there's some flipping to our 7 on tournament. There's some really good freshman teams, middle school teams, obviously high school teams, but the youth is really strong, and I feel like it's sometimes kind of cyclical where you'll have really good kind of groups of young kids. I remember KT Prep a couple years ago when the Kenyans told us like, hey, right now our top high school team is okay, but this eighth grade and ninth grade class, look out. And then we see all the guys that go on and sign. And I feel like we're kind of seeing that right now in Northwest programs.
I think, I mentioned JT and Emeka and Josh Connerly, and they were in that 2021, 2022 class. And, the 2020 class before, you had G. Scott, who was a starting tight end on Ohio State's national championship team this year as well. And this 2028 class and the incoming 2029 class is kind of evoking the same excitement in the state and in the region that the 2020 through 2022 class kind of evoked when those guys were young. I mean, remember when I saw JT for the first time, he hadn't even played a high school football game. He was an eighth grader at the Washington camp, or just finished eighth grade. And, he ends up becoming really the defensive MVP of the playoffs for Ohio State in their national title run. Emeka, the all-time leading receiver. I still remember, we were at, it was when you were still doing the Winter League at Curtis High School, or not Curtis High School, whatever school, the old Wilson High School, Silas High School.
Silas.
And, it was a cold day, and he had the mask on and his helmet on. And I'm like, who the hell is this kid in the gold shoes? And Courtney Taylor just got this huge smile on his face, and with his deep, raspy voice said, "Oh, that's Emeka." I was like, all you needed to say was Emeka, because we knew what he did as a freshman. And, he had that great freshman year. A month later, I see him at an event. He ends up being the #1 receiver in the country. And you think of Ohio State's storied history, and he's their all-time leading
that's insane
receiver. So this class may not have a JT or an Emeka type, but the anticipation, the excitement of these guys as freshmen and as even incoming freshmen is kind of at a high.
So let's hop into that. I like to talk about the programs that come to our tournaments. This is one of the features when people are choosing tournaments. There's a bunch of options, just like kids have options on different programs to play in. And one of the things I love about what we do is this is a real chance for us to talk about programs, the people running them, the kids, the coaches, and get to see them in person. And so each time we're talking, we're more accurate in assessments, get a better understanding of kids we knew about. And then there's always kids that pop up every tournament. We're like, whoa, did you see him? Check him out. And that's a really cool thing. And it's important to, show love to these guys that work really hard to put these programs together. And so let's start with it. I'm going to just come right out the gate. Team Alpha, out of Portland, Oregon. You got DY and EFO. DY is he's an OG in the industry now. And EFO obviously is a big name. And those guys have a great relationship and have built a phenomenal program and have done it the right way. And I'm really excited. This is first time having them in our circuit in a couple years. And they're the program I was most excited to see this tournament. And they've got a lot of studs, high school, and some young guys. I know there's a young one you really like. Talk about Team Alpha freshman kid.
Yeah, Jake Camper, who's at Wesleyan High School, if that name sounds familiar, his older brother, Mark Camper, was arguably the top player in the state of Oregon, at least on both sides of the ball in 2022 when they won their first state title under John Eagle. They also had a quarterback named Sam Levitt, who, damn near beat Texas in the Peach Bowl, helped ASU win the Big 12. But Mark Camper was that two-way standout. And we had him as the number 7 player in the state at 24/7, the highest in the entire industry, an absolute steal by Idaho. And he goes to Idaho, is a stud for Jason Eck for 2 years, goes into the portal, and ultimately picked Wisconsin over USC and Stanford. And now he's expected to be an impact guy. Well, Jake is getting a lot of the same praise as a freshman and as a youngster that Mark did. And there's even a little bit more excitement about his potential ceiling. You've also got Tyler Holmes, whose brother also played at Wesleyan, and Wesleyan won their second state title, and I think it was their second state title in 3 years, and a lot of youth on that team too. And so Team Alpha's got some youngsters to watch, but I'm eager to see the younger Hamper, because Mark was a badass, and I remember the impact he had on the game defensively and offensively. And if you're getting some praise that you might be better than your big brother, as the oldest brother, when Jim and John played each other in the Super Bowl, I had to root for John, because I always know the older brother is the more talented one. And then they always try to make the younger brother feel better by making him sound like he might be better than big bro.
Yeah, yeah.
But, in this case, it could happen.
Um, to stay on the young kid theme, freshman theme, War won our freshman division in the Space Needle shootout. Rob Mason runs the War program, and Rob, you talk an OG. Rob's literally like on one of the Mount Rushmores of building football in the offseason in the Northwest, and has had this group as youngsters, and now they're a freshman group and playing the high school group, and they're really pushing. We have not had a team yet, Huff, that has won a freshman championship and a high school championship in the same tournament. Air one year won it in freshman, made the championship in high school and lost. But War has, when you have a QB like they do, you're always going to have a chance. And staying with the young kid theme, talk about AJ a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, AJ got offers from quite a few schools already. Arizona State, Miami, Oregon offered him in January. In fact, he missed the first day of the Space Needle shootout because he was at Oregon's Junior Day, one of the very small, select few 2028 quarterbacks in the country with an Oregon offer. But, it's not just AJ. Sticking with the younger brother theme, Colton Terry at Tumwater High School. He's the younger brother of Austin Terry, who was at Boise State, played at Tumwater as well, signed with Boise State, I believe, in the 2022 class. Broncos made it to the Fiesta Bowl this year. They got a playoff bye, won the Mountain West, and again, the reports are he may be a more athletic version compared to his brother. A great pass catcher, and if you know anything about football in the state of Washington, I know you do, but the listeners, Tumwater does not like to throw the ball that much. They've won numerous state titles by running the rock. And that's why Austin played a lot of 7-on-7, and that's why Colton's played a lot of 7-on-7 to show that he's got that receiving ability. And then Isaiah Mason, who I believe is the nephew of Rob, he's got two cousins that both played in the Big Sky, Trey Mason and then Juice Mason.
Juice, yeah.
I think Juice must have won like 137 MVP awards on the circuit.
Yep.
In fact, he won the last MVP in the last 7-on-7 tournament he ever played was the Battle in Seattle Memorial Day weekend, and then helped that GK team be one of the top 3 teams the state's ever produced. And so the younger Mason cousin Isaiah is a two-way player like Juice was, but he's also kind of like pristine route runner like Trey was. So eager to see a couple of those guys, and then with a quarterback like AJ who can dish the rock.
And again, this is actually pretty fascinating because, like, real talk, and we do a podcast for every tournament. Usually we're talking all these older kids, and we're starting off talking about these younger kids, and that excites me because that's the future. There's still some great upperclassmen we're going to talk about too, but another really elite freshman team, White Me Down boys, Frank Murdoch and Ryan Clary. They're based out of Bellevue, Washington, and their high school team is not in it this weekend. They're loaded too, but they'll be in all the rest of them. But the freshman team, they've got some dudes too. Talk talk about a couple of the kids on the White Me Down Boys freshman squad.
Yeah, kind of sticking to that same kind of theme again, where you got a lot of really good 2028s. Two of the players on Wipe Me Down Boys 15U team also play on their 18U team, but this week with the 15U, yeah, Caden Weaver out of North Creek High School, up in Bothell, 2028, already has an offer from Oregon State. And then Chris Allo, who's a linebacker at Roosevelt, got his first offer from Nevada in January, and then late January, Washington offered him. And with Jed Fish and his staff, they don't do a ton of early offering to guys unless you can potentially be a dude. And I've seen Chris at a couple of tournaments already this winter, and definitely going to be one of those top defensive prospects in the state in 2028. And they're both playing on the 15U team as their freshmen.
And shout out to the Alu family, such good people. You and I in this industry, and we've done this a long time. And so we interact with all of the programs and coordinators and parents and kids, and yeah, there's obviously negative experiences with people, but there's so many good people too in this industry. And I like to more focus on that type of stuff. Guys like the Rob Masons and the T. Lus and so many good people that just are awesome to be around and make it a fun experience for us to do it, because these are long weekends for us. I mean, we're out there doing this. Like, the reason all these kids, I think sometimes people don't fully appreciate, Huff, and you don't gas yourself up. I will for you, but like how much work you do. Like, you're out there, you're at these events, you're in the trenches, man. Like, I see all these young guys trying to come up and be like media guys and think they're gonna, and I'm like, I never see you. Like, but like you're a Twitter warrior, but you're not out here watching. Like, I mean, with you, it actually is amazing. We'll be talking, and I see a play, and you were looking that way, and then later that night we're at dinner talking, and you're running down that play, and like all the guys in it. I'm like, dude, how many like sets of eyes do you have? But
And you're not getting the Chat GPT write up for me like you are from some of these other websites out there that exist that are, taking money to churn
yeah.
out a scouting report.
Yeah, and that's the difference, I mean, with what we're doing, like, you got to earn your stripes around here, and when you do, like, it's real, and that's the culture we've built, and so I'm excited about it, and that's why I love all the young kids we're talking about, because that means we're gonna get to see these kids for a lot of years coming through. Want to flip to a program that is in their first tournament of the year with us um, for the circuit Rise out of Puyallup, Washington, run by Mike Westbrook. And Mike, another guy, just awesome dude. Another OG in the game. He's been around it, had kids through it, coaching, mentoring, and he took over that Rise program, and that was a program that like existed and had a great facility. It had it, but it was just kind of like, and then once he took that thing over, I remember telling you, I'm like, this gonna be different now. Like, this dude, what, like, this is gonna be different, and you're seeing it in how many teams they got and the talent they got, and what they're going and doing. So super excited to see them. They got teams at all the levels, but they've got a couple headliners. And we talked about a really good quarterback in AJ at War. Rise has a pretty good signal caller themselves. Speak it to the people listening about the background of him.
When I die, which hopefully still is not for another 30 or 40 years, I want the video or whatever form of multimedia exists when I pass on to be voiced over by Mike Westbrook. The sweet dulcet sounds and
Silky
tones of his
smooth.
voice are the most soothing. And when you hear Mike and you go to an
Yeah.
event and this is how Mike looks every time. He's got a coffee and he just, I'm not here to wax poetic about Mike's voice, but he's one of those guys that I don't mind getting on the phone. You know how much I hate being on the phone. I'm a texter, not a caller. But when Mike calls on the occasional time where I do pick it up, that voice, and when he speaks, like you said, it's not just throwing stuff against the wall. And we talked about 28 and 29, but there's some 27s with the Rise program that are already household names, already hold offers from the two Wednesday schools. You got Josiah Mitchell, who's a receiver. We saw him. He was one of the receiver MVPs at the Avery Strong Showcase. back in June. Got offered, I believe, by Washington and Washington State at the camp. And then Sione Cajo was, I want to say, one of the quarterback MVPs
Yep.
in the morning session, has offers already from Washington, Oregon, several other national programs out of Lincoln High School. That's as good of a passer catcher combo as you're going to find on the West Coast, let alone, in the Pacific Northwest. And, both got 2 more years of the circuit left and 2 more years of high school ball. But, Sione is probably the top quarterback in the Northwest in 27 for sure, but, potentially the top quarterback period in 2027, although AJ might have a word, and some of the other guys that are in the 26 class might have a word. But Sione's kind of got the offers and attention that's backing it up, which is no surprise. He's got two brothers that both played major Power Five football. One, Brandon Cajo, won a national championship at Alabama before he transferred to UCLA. So some good bloodlines there.
Michael, is it Pulalasi?
Mm-hmm.
There's some lineage there too.
Oh yeah, with Leo.
Yeah, linebacker for them. I'm excited to see him.
And the thing with Michael is like he's versatile. He'll go to a camp and he'll work out a defensive line and be an edge rusher in a morning session. Then he'll stick around do the linebacker session and work on that pass drop. And that's not a surprise because Leo was the same way. He could have been an all-world linebacker, but instead he's become like a major part of the Washington State rushing attack as a running back. So the Pulalasis have some positional versatility.
Couple young kids on their freshman team. Excited to see Jaleo Johnson, Quentin Boone, Donovan Wilson, and Logan Seaberg. It's fun because every tournament there's the kids we know about that it's like, hey, they always perform. We know what we're getting. And then there's kids that's like, hey, heard about, excited to see or seen a little bit of, want to see more of. And then there's kids like, hey, knew nothing about, but whoa. And that's the really fun part to this and
Well,
aspect
it's
of it.
like that the Conor McGregor meme. Who the bleep is that guy? We're kind of looking at, but in not in a derogatory way, but in like a no, seriously, who is that guy? Because that guy's
Yep.
a dude.
Yep. Absolutely. Speaking of dudes, Corday Norling. So on the youth kid theme, let's go to the air program. Reggie Jones has run air for a lot of years now, based out of Puyallup, Washington, and his roster is loaded. Especially DB Island is Reggie. There's a lot of these guys that are specialists. We talked about Dylan DY as a receiver, Eve was a DB, and then Reggie's DB, Courtney Taylor, receiver coach. You see so many of these guys that are really good DQ with linemen. But with Air Black, they won the Space Needle Shootout, and they had made an adjustment. Reggie called an audible after his first tournament where their defense was shutting people down, but offense just wasn't putting up points. And so he took Corday, who is a freshman and incoming freshman, and said, "Look, I'm putting him up." He sent to Corday like, "Hey, you're up," and he comes to the tournament and wins it and wins MVP. Absolutely astounding to do, where so many kids would have gone in and that stage would have been too big and the bright lights too bright. That's what I've watched Corday for a lot of years. We don't talk too much about the youth because every dad out there is like Gronk Jr. and all that stuff. But Corday has been one of those ones that we've watched, and it's like, yeah, there's in that group, they're just different, and he is. Yeah, really, really talented. There's another really talented young player on air that you like as well.
Yeah. Again, we go back to the 2018 cycle and getting a chance to see Emeka, and he was a ninth grader. We had heard all the kind of the fanfare about him leading up to that point, but there's another pretty talented receiver coming up the ranks in the King County area, and that's Justin Suega, who I believe will be attending Cascade Christian in Puyallup. But big 6'3", 175-pound receiver. I got a chance to see him a couple of times already this winter, and I'm buying stock right now in him being potentially one of the top receivers on the West Coast in that 2020, not God dang, the 2029 class already.
So I'm just telling you, like, if it existed in the stock to be able to buy what Huff just said, do it, because when Brandon Huffman speaks like that doesn't happen often and that doesn't come lightly. Like Huff is an old timer where he's skeptical, like to put his word on it. So when he does, and I can vouch for that because I've seen the kid and he's real, and Corday and Dash and that whole group. I mean, it's they're really special. They've won a lot all the way through. So mention just real quickly, we talked a lot about the top air kids in the last tournament, but just for people that are new on this podcast, a couple of the top kids on air and the offers that they have.
Yeah, you got Tristan Baker out of Lakes High School, who's fully healthy. He missed a lot of the offseason last year, but now he's back, playing well. Joey Thomas III has been an MVP at the Avery Strong Showcases. Thought he acquitted himself really well this last weekend when I was in Vegas. Again, it's no surprise that there's DBs there galore at Air. Those guys in the secondary that really cover a lot of ground. But Courtney Taylor, don't sleep on the receiving job. With Justin Suega, with Kason Carter, who is a 2028 that has a couple of offers in. We saw him a couple of weeks ago as well. So that Courtney Reggie rivalry on their own squad of who's
Yeah,
got the dudes.
yeah,
Hey, Reggie, I hate to break this to you, but right now, Courtney's got the all-time leading receiver at Ohio State that was on his side of the ball. Although you and I both have said this plenty of times, and Reggie and I have had this conversation. Emeka would have been a first-round draft pick as a safety,
yeah. He was
without
just a
question.
dude. Yeah, he's just you're a dude. You're a dude. Huff, Big
A
12.
point
Let's
for
talk
Courtney.
about them. We're coming into Vancouver, and this is right in their backyard. Jamar Howard has really grown this to be a big time program. Teams at all the levels, and they've got a lot of firepower, a lot of big time names. The headliner is Brock Harris, who is a tight end, five-star, I believe. Talk a little bit about him. Obviously, five-star, he's got offers, but that's the featured name we're excited to see this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's the 2026 class is as good of a tight end group as I've seen in a long time in this industry. And Brock has been a mainstay in that top three nationally. He was a little under the weather this last weekend in Vegas, and you could tell that he was a little bit just kind of grasping for air, getting over a cold. But, he's back. He was the MVP at the tournament in Canby last year, the Portland tournament. So we know what he's capable of. And then obviously you got Zamari Tellez out of Federal Way, who I thought had a really good weekend last weekend in Vegas as well. And then I'm going to give a shout out to their quarterback, Nate Donovan, who's fresh off a state championship at
Yeah.
Sumner High School. We talked about Tumwater being a pretty run-heavy program. Sumner has always had a good tradition of winning with defense, but they love to run the ball. But Nate was the quarterback for them this year, led them on a state championship winning drive that I think was won by a field goal in the final seconds or final minutes or whatever it was. That was like 2 months ago, which feels like 2 years ago. But Nate Donovan, 2026 out of Sumner. I know you trained him when he was younger as well. So give it up to a little bit for Nate for winning a state title and then, distributing the ball.
Yeah, and he's one of those ones where I'm very similar to you. Work with and see a lot of young kids, and every parent swears they're going to be the greatest. And but Nate, you just knew he was different because he was a kid that it's like a lot of times you see young kids where it's like, man, if the kid wanted it as much as the parent did, the kid would be a stud. But then you see those kids where it's like, man, they get out of the car and they're already to the field before the parent, has closed the door. And that was Nate. Like that's a kid who's hungry. He loves the game. He works, and you've seen the development in it. You've seen the results of it. And he is a super, super talented kid, great family, good people. I'm excited to see him this weekend. He's got some weapons, and it's a team that is talented and that they put it together. There's a few teams that can win this weekend, and Big 12 is definitely one of them. And Nate will have to have a big weekend to do so. Huff, we're gonna wrap this up over the next couple minutes. Want to Give a shout out to a couple new programs in our circuit this year. IBC, we got Alex Big Fooey. When we talk about OGs and legends in the game, and Tessa, wife side by side, and in fact, she might even be leading the charge. But they run a great program down there, great people. They've got a bunch of 5-on teams coming, a bunch of 7-on teams coming. And you talk about a guy who's just a difference maker with kids in their lives and developing. So super excited to have them in the tournament this weekend and there with their vibes. I'll mention a couple other programs, but you want to say anything about FUI?
Bowie always makes sure that the middle of the field is clear and you can see the scoreboard and has a imposing presence. And then usually Tessa always has some kind of little goodie in her bag of
Yes.
like, I'm supposed to not eat a lot of sugar and trying to, watch weight. And then she's always got a little bag there. So, oh, you want this? And I'm like, well, of course I'll have one or two or five. That there's always that's part of the reason why the Canby event is so great too, is the food trucks at that and
Yes.
the restaurants right around. So I know that we're still 2 months away from that event, but
Yep.
that's one thing about Fui. He knows how to make those long days go quicker by making sure it's stocked well with the food that we need.
And I will say this, as big and as imposing and scary looking as he is, if I had to pick between him or Tessa to take one-on-one, I'd choose him because I'm scared of Tessa. Like,
What?
do not mess with Tessa. So shout out to the Fuis. Couple other programs. I want to give a shout out. Fogerson Athletics, Jory Fogerson, based out of Bothell, Washington. They did our tournament last tournament. He's like, I wish we could just multiply him a million times over. The way the coaches he's brought into his program, the way the kids behave, the way he runs it, they're still building it out and getting the talent in there. And, he and I have had multiple talks about being patient, building it, and he's doing it the right way. So no shout out because they've got a 5-star or this or that, more just
Hey,
because like he's a
but I
good
do
guy
want to
doing
give a
it.
shout out. To this day, I've lived in the state of Washington for 20 years now. There were two hits that I can always remember that will never be matched. The one most recently was in 2012 when Miles Jack broke the collarbone of the starting quarterback for Euless Trinity in the toughest game
Yeah.
Bellevue had that year, knocked the quarterback out, and then on 4th down, the backup quarterback threw an interception so that Bellevue could beat him. But was in the state championship game where Joey Ferguson damn near won that game by himself against Skyline, ran for like a bazillion yards in that game. But he had a hit on Kason Williams that, I remember interviewing Kason when he was a senior. He still talked about that to him as he was a freshman at the time. That was like his welcome to varsity moment. And for as good of a running back as Joey was, that hit still 17 plus years later resonates because it was inside the Tacoma Dome and the hit echoed inside the Tacoma Dome. And it was one of those where like people were just in shock and awe at the because I think he played every damn snap that game on offensive defense. So shout out for Jory, 17 years later for still providing one of the most memorable hits I've ever seen in a high school football game.
Bro, you bring up the Tacoma Dome. It just that like I miss those days, those like weekends in the Tacoma Dome championships and the vibes. I miss it. But yeah, shout out to Jory. To wrap it up here, big time 7-on-7 coming out of Calgary, up in Canada. Keon Raymond, that's a big time name, a really good player in his own right. Runs an awesome program and just another really good dude. They're doing this tourney, they're doing our LA tourney. They do multiple each year. Great kids, good program, good family. So excited to see them come down, and always good to link up with him and his crew. 3 programs that I just want to give a shout out to. Mountain View High School in Vancouver, run by Sean McDonald. Woodland High School, run by Coach Flanagan. And Kamiak High School, Coach Ivan up in Mukilteo, Washington. These are high school programs. How we started up the high school league. And so they do our high school league dates, and then they come do some tournaments. And they're running their own systems, playing with their own teammates, wearing their own stuff. And so I love the coaches that are supportive of it, and their kids are coming down and getting reps and playing and getting better. So excited to see all of them get in there and compete. So going to be a fun weekend, Huff. I know on the weather you probably really jinxed it, and that's all right. It's why I dislike you like I do. But either way, rain or sun or cold, it's going to be an awesome tournament on both sides, 7-on-7 and 5-on-5. And I know that you wanted to finish. You specifically asked me if you could have the end to do your predictions because you love doing predictions
Yeah.
and love the feedback people get. At first, I'm like, this is no, okay, no, that was intentional. Yep, I see what he did there. That was a vet move. I love it. All right.
I
Well,
got momentary laryngitis.
yep. The mouth was moving, but it was funny. I couldn't hear it. I want to ask you to repeat it. I might ask a lip
Yeah, we're on
reader.
a time crunch, so I gotta get to my next appointment.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Come link with us this weekend. It's going to be great vibes out there. We got a good barbecue food truck coming too, so we have good food. Coach Peterson at Heritage High School. It's a great venue. He does a great job. So going to be a lot of fun. Come swing by this weekend. Check it out. We'll see you at the Battle at the Border.